All right, welcome back to the Crave Show. We're here with me, Chris. We got JRuss and a very special guest. I'm super excited. We have Alethia Austin with us. How are you doing, Alethia?
Hey guys, I'm doing great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. JRuss, how's it going, man?
It's going well. Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys doing all right?
Yeah. We this past weekend we had a boogie here in San Marcos, the Come and Space It boogie. And actually, Alethia and Tex were there all weekend
Mm.
organizing. So it's super fun getting to hang out with them and getting to talk. And uh, it was just such a, Alethea and I were talking a minute ago, it was really just a nice atmosphere at the boogie. Kind of not slow at all, but it was just calm. I think that's the word that I would use.
Mm.
Calm. Everybody was just enjoying being together. Everybody's enjoying jumping. It never felt like you were having to rush and like force your way, like trying to get on loads and stuff. Like there was plenty of space, but there was enough people there that we were filling up the loads. We were jumping together. Everybody had stuff to do. It was just a really nice atmosphere. I mean, Alethea, is that kind of,
That's pretty accurate. It was also nice because a lot of these events you're just rushing, right? Everybody wants to get as many jumps in as they can, and felt like this weekend you had enough time to really get in as many jumps as you wanted, but also have these meaningful conversations in between and just moments with people, which is sometimes you walk away from an event with all these lovely people there and you think, man, I couldn't connect with that person. And this weekend felt like it was rich in those connections in between the jumps.
yeah, it was cool. And we had, I don't know, I wasn't there. I wasn't able to be there Saturday because I had like family stuff. I was telling you guys, my son graduated from high school, so we had family stuff Saturday, but Sunday and Monday both we had weather holds pretty much most of the morning. Saturday we didn't start jumping until like 3,
Yeah.
but it still felt like a full day of jumping, even though it was
Yeah.
cool. It was really fun.
It's those long Texas sunny days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what have you been doing, JRuss? What's been going on?
Uh, we had a team training that ended last weekend. We actually we got a decent number of jumps, but then the last Sunday was kind of crap weather, so I think the guys changed their flights and left a little bit early. This week it's mostly been about we live basically in a trailer park in the summer, and it's just been about trying to make the trailer park as nice as possible. Uh, so it just cleaned up from last year and straightened up. Yeah, that I mean, it hasn't been a very eventful week. It was a little bit cool in Chicago. The Rhythm got back to training today. They were fighting with clouds, and we've got an event coming up this weekend. I head down skills camp and just getting ready for that. Yeah.
Hey, so where are you guys at on the bus? Are you?
So, well, after this camp, this weekend, Steph and I go back to Colorado for 5 or 6 days and work on it. And then
Okay. Are you close?
Well, I think if you saw it, you would probably think, oh, that's not that close. But from my perspective, all the prep is pretty much done. So I need to spray foam the interior. I got all the insulation up except that, and then I got to clean that up, and then put walls up, install the bathroom, which will take a day, build the bed, put in the cabinets that we're going to put in, install the heater, the water heater, and rack the solar. So that sounds like a lot.
That sounds like a lot.
But each thing is just about a day. And so I've got 14 days left to work on it before we need to drive it down to Tucson. So
yeah,
I think I'm feeling pretty good.
okay, yeah, you are getting close. Cool.
So instead of living in our house in the winter, we can live in a trailer in the summer and a bus in the winter.
There you go. And I can come stay in your house.
Yeah.
What kind of a bus is it?
Steph bought a city bus a couple of years ago, like the more boxy kind, not so much the school bus, but I just haven't had any dedicated time to work on it. But we have been doing just more and more military work in the winter to the point where, like, we had a free place to stay with the owner of Firebird for years, and he moved down to Florida, so we lost our free place to stay, and we thought we would rather buy a little bit of land and park our bus there, and have our own place. So I got to work on the bus.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I have a question so Alethia and I had a chance at the Boogie because we were on Weather Holds. We got to talk about a lot of really good stuff. We had probably 3 different really, really good conversations about different stuff. But I have another question that I want to bring up to both of y'all. This was from a friend of mine at the Drop Zone. Alethia, you know him, Derek Lewis. He actually said, hey, would you guys spend a little bit of time talking about etiquette under canopy? Like, what are the things that new skydivers or experienced skydivers maybe don't think about? And it made me think about when he said that, I was like, yeah, that's a great idea, because I grew up playing a lot of tennis, and tennis, there's some pretty clear etiquette when you're on the tennis court, and the way that you just different things that you do, the way you get a ball for people or before you go across the court. There's all sorts of stuff. And people new to the sport, they don't know. And the only way they know is if someone tells them and teaches them. And so one of the things that Alethia and I had a really good conversation about was how we as skydivers try to teach one another. We were talking specifically when someone makes a mistake, whether it's safety related or not, the way that we correct people and the appropriate, good, positive way to do that versus, reacting out of fear and frustration. So when Derek asked me that, he was like, hey, could y'all talk about etiquette? I was like, oh, that's a great opportunity to share with the community, teach, and in a positive way. You guys both have tons of experience. So what are the things that come to mind when I say that? Etiquette under canopy. What do you think about?
Whew, that's a good one. It's a needed one as well. I have a couple off the top of my head. If I can.
Yeah,
go for it, please. Yeah.
Like if I think about beginner skydivers and you don't know what you don't know, and just being under canopy with so many different people on the load. It was actually at San Marcos where there was somebody kind of flying a bit of a funky canopy with a huge canopy. So I kind of identified them as like somewhat new in the sport. And I'm just giving a little bit of a kick on the legs to make sure that they're aware I'm coming in, on my 89, and I'm going to be crossing them as they're kind of coming into the pattern, not in the place that they should be. And there was no kick whatsoever. And we chatted about it on the ground, and they had no idea that we had a little bit of a communication tool. So that's one really small thing, but it does actually make a difference, especially as a new person under the canopy, to understand there is actually a signal of, I see you, you see me. Okay, now we're in communication. Another thing that I think that is an underused aspect of canopy flying is going into breaks. To create more vertical separation to, especially for bigger canopies, maybe that are getting first out. And then we've got the merging of other canopies that are at a higher wing loading coming through, and everybody's kind of trying to go to the same spot. It's so useful to understand that you can actually go into half breaks for however long you need to create some vertical separation from other groups and just space out the landing pattern for people.
Nice. Yeah, that's good.
Comes to mind.
Okay, while JRuss, maybe you're thinking before, if you have something to share, because you said breaks, somebody said this to me this weekend, and I had never heard this. They said it's a thing, but I didn't know this. They said if you fly in half breaks with your arms all the way out, does that communicate something to either of y'all?
Doesn't register for me.
No? Okay. No. They said that communicates, hey, I want you to pass me, or I'm trying to slow down so that you can pass me.
Oh, yeah. If I see somebody that I'm around the same level wing loading with, and maybe we're kind of coming into the same, base or even downwind together, and I already know they're on a steeper trim than I am. I've got this girl at Spaceland Houston. We're on the same exact canopy, but she just goes a little bit faster than me. So usually if I see her coming in, I'm on half brakes just for 2 seconds. And that's going to give her enough time to be able to make
get
it
around you,
not struggling to get into the pattern at the same.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
don't think
cool.
that like it's necessarily that signal, but I think just common sense will tell you like, they're gonna, looks
They're
like
gonna let me go.
they're gonna let me pass.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Another thing too, I think for etiquette and just canopy flying in general is it's in the beginning. We try to have this conversation at Spaceland a lot too. If there's four, and we had this in Spaceland, San Marcos as well, but if say there's like three four-way free fly groups going out,
Okay.
we'll try to put the ones with the higher wing loading towards the front and then the ones with the lower wing loading towards the back and sort out exit order in that way. So trying to have that conversation a bit more with the beginners as well, so that they can kind of sort that out. When you've got four solo bellies, they can kind of work it out amongst themselves. Well, I'm on a 1-1 and I'm on a 1-4, and maybe it's going to make sense for the 1.4 to go out first.
Yeah. What comes to your mind with canopy etiquette, JRuss?
I mean, I think a lot of that was really good stuff. I did get a smile just that people are so different about, Alethia, we had a guest on who's got a lot of experience as well. And he said he doesn't like the leg kick thing because he feels like you look at the person, you kick their legs, they kick their legs, you kick yours, and then you've dismissed the person as if I saw them. And I'm not saying this is what your words were or that this is what you do, but he just he wanted to do away with that signal, I think. and I don't know. I think it's nice to acknowledge people, and I love Steve. I don't dismiss people or stop looking at them or worrying about them after. Sometimes I kick my legs because I'm glad they see me when I'm not really sure. But it just made me laugh because if you have 100 people,
like 2 weeks ago.
you're gonna have 100 different opinions. Years ago, Brian Burke, who was he was the SNTA and manager at Skydive Arizona for, I don't know what, 25 years maybe. And he was just there forever. And he wrote an article, and if I could paraphrase, although I don't even know if I'm paraphrasing, he might have just said this, the more you touch your toggles, the dumber you are, or something to that effect. I don't even think he was that nice. I think I made it nicer. But
I must be real dumb.
Well, I really try and think about that when I'm under canopy of just, and that could translate for a lot of people to being slow and predictable and not making a lot of erratic moves, and hopefully it does. But sometimes I don't know the right way to call people newer jumpers maybe, are out kind of cowboying around under canopy when there's 22 people on the load, and I don't think that's the time for it. So I think that I agree with a lot of what Alethia said. I would just add on maybe that if you want to go play around with your canopy, then do hop and pop and make sure you've got some freedom in the sky as much as you can. Yeah, those are mostly good stuff.
So another kind of specific question that he was kind of asking in relation to this is, when you're in the pattern, or you're approaching the pattern, I think he was kind of saying you're starting to get in the pattern you're in, and you see someone in front of you or near you, and it seems as if they're intentionally going really, really wide. I think for him, he was kind of sometimes maybe not sure how to interpret that and how to deal with that and what he's supposed to do for safety, number one, but also etiquette-wise, just to like, okay, what are they trying to do, and what do I do to help allow them what they need and to keep them safe, to keep me safe? What's the proper way to deal with that?
That's a good one for me. Like if I take that wide line, it's because I need to kind of adhere to somebody else behind me who's probably going to land a little bit before me, and I started my downwind maybe for whatever scenario a little bit high. So I usually take that further line to make sure that all that inside space of the landing area is going to be available for anybody who's a little bit faster to get down for me. I was just demoing I'm demoing a new canopy right now. And so trying to figure out, how to maneuver this in different conditions has me starting my downwind a little bit higher. Also, it's a high performance, so it's just getting used to just going straight for my landing. So I do come out a little bit high. Obviously, everybody that jumps with me, they understand me as a canopy pilot, so they're super comfortable taking that inside line. But I'd say for some scenarios, and in my experience, a wider line means I'm letting you take that turn and letting you get into the pattern, and making sure I save you that space. But Derek, what a lovely man. It's also, I mean, having lived in a couple different countries and skydived around the world, oh man, there are so many of these nuances and these subtleties in skydiving that we might feel comfortable at our home drop zone or in this country where it just isn't that way everywhere. So it's really, I think the more that we can open up that discussion and in that moment understand the tools that we have to be able to have a safe landing, for instance, going on brakes maybe, or whatever it is available to you in that one scenario, is just going to make it safe for us. And then opening that conversation on the ground of, hey, so many conversations happen for me on the landing area of like, did you see I gave you that wide line? Did that feel good? Are we good? Yeah, that felt great. Okay, I was giving this to you so that you could take that inside line, so that we can start to kind of establish that relationship together as skydivers sharing the same sky.
Yeah. JRuss, anything to add?
I guess what I was thinking about when the question was asked was, if I'm setting up on my crosswind and thinking about my turn to final, it's normally a 450. If someone has somehow worked their way down where they're lower than me, and I'm watching them also go on a crosswind leg, and they're taking it wide, I'm probably just bailing on my turn. Because I'm not going to do anything while they're there. And even once they turn in, I probably had to slow down. And I'm not sure now what the airspace is behind me, and it's hard to check both those places at once. So like, I probably just don't. I mean, I do a 90, or I don't swoop at all on that landing.
Okay, you bring up a good point, because specifically at San Marcos, the main landing area, you're not allowed to do anything more than a 90.
Okay.
So I think specifically that question that he was asking was in probably in regards to that main landing area where nobody's doing high performance turns or anything. There's a separate area across the runway where if you want to do that stuff. So I think that's, what was in his mind when he was asking that question, thinking about it. People would only be doing a maximum of a 90, something like that. So, but what you're saying makes sense too.
I guess if you're looking at somebody who's going out wide below you, and anything changes about what you're doing, I think just the overwhelming thought in my mind would be like, hey, be real conservative right here, because you just slowed down. The picture changed for the people behind you, and you don't know who maybe ducked in behind you and how close they are, but you hit the brakes because this guy, and like, just don't take anything for granted in that moment.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Excellent. That's helpful. Okay. So Alethia, we kind of skipped over, sorry, this is my fault. We skipped over an introduction. JRuss, help me out here. What's
just give us what you want us to know. What's your bio stuff, and for sure your astrological sign and all that important stuff.
Gemini.
That's the least important thing.
Gosh, all right. Well, we'll keep it to skydiving because that makes the most sense. But I've been in the sport for 23 years, and professionally 11-ish, 10-ish. I worked in Skydive Spain and Skydive Algarve and Skydive Hibelstow. I ran the marketing department over there when I was living in Spain. And at that time, I started the LSD camps, and started, hosting every 2 months big way camps. And also just really went for it with my own flying. Never had any intention to be a coach, just gave everything to the sport because I loved it so much. And after running LSD for about 4 or 5 years, I started to get requests to go coach around Europe. Started to do it and just kept getting more requests in. And at some point I think I had 30 events in 1 year. And was still working as the marketing director for those 3 events. My boss, the Swallows, they were so happy to see me go in that direction. And as long as I could take care of my marketing team and keep hitting the numbers that we needed, I could do this kind of on the road coaching. But after that first year, I decided, you know what, this is kind of weird. I think I'm going to do it full time. And so I've been doing it full time now for 6 years. Having a lot of doing a lot of private coaching, a lot of one-on-ones and two-on-ones, but a lot of events for a long, long time, and starting to just cherry pick the events now. So mostly based out of Skydive Houston with a couple international events a year. I have LSD angle camps now as well. So I put on about 10 camps a year, anything from vertical head first, vertical feet first, angle head first, and angle feet first. And they're true skills camps. Like there's no partying. It's just, we come, we really focus, and everybody's there to train. I'm also the editor for Skydive Mag. I read a lot of articles on safety, a lot of articles with interviews of people doing interesting stuff in the sport. Just a lot of stuff that I've found in my 20 plus years of being in the sport that have been really profound for my development as a flyer, and also just somebody who's experiencing and hopes to experience for a long time this longevity in the sport. I also run tunnel wellness retreats with my partner, Tex. I'm outside of skydiving a yoga teacher for 15 years, and I run full yoga retreats that are completely unrelated to skydiving around the world. And so I finally bridged that part of my world. I was able to combine all these passions into skydiving as well. So I have these tunnel wellness retreats with Tex, and they're a huge passion because where we were speaking, Chris, I can fully geek out on these things that are like massive to me as a flyer, just massive. So those have been really, really fun. We've been doing them for 4 years now. And yeah, I'm hungry. I'm a student. I train all the time for myself in the tunnel. I train all this time for myself in the sky. And I'm just a skydiver who's somehow getting paid to also spread some information. I love it.
That's cool. So when did you say your first skydive was?
It would have been in 2000, I think 2003.
Okay.
2002, somewhere around there, at a place called California City Skydive, which was in the Mojave Desert, north of LA by about 2.5 hours. And it was Wild West. We would jump out of a Twin Otter, and it was a predominantly belly flyer community above 60 years old. There are 4 free flyers out there, and I thought they were the coolest people in the world. They couldn't believe they were doing this thing called the head down. It was like mind-blowing. We would go jump. We'd make like 3 or 4 jumps a day, and then we'd shoot shotguns out in the desert and drive cars around, and just, it was totally wild. Nobody really took it that seriously, and I kind of thought that's what we did. You know, you just did, like, you jump a toilet out of the plane and then go shoot shotguns. And at some point I realized that, like, you could actually kind of geek out on it and go crazy, but I'm really grateful for the
So what made you do that first skydive? Why did you go jump the very first time?
Yeah, you know, it was weird. I grew up in a really small town, and I had been living in Los Angeles for like a year, and the city was totally like mind-blowing to me. I couldn't make sense of it at all. I didn't fit in anywhere. I felt like I was fumbling around trying to be a part of this really bizarre lifestyle down there. And I just couldn't kind of get my feet on the ground. I was really a bit bedazzled by this whole experience living down there. And I remember I was sitting at this desk where I was working, and I thought, I should go skydiving. And it just, like, the thought just appeared out of nowhere. And so I opened up the yellow pages, because we still use like paper to look at phone numbers. I opened up the yellow pages and I found California City Skydive, and I called, and they sounded so sweet. It was this woman named Alberta Prey, Van and Alberta Prey. They own the drop zone up there. And I drove myself up there, and yeah, and the rest is history.
Just for no reason, you just had the thought, I should go skydiving.
Yeah. And I was just, people who know me will think it's hilarious, but I was, it's just this caricature already of myself. I was, pigtails and just like, just so soulfully touched by this experience. Every time I was on the plane, I was taking inventory, like, does my mom know I love her? And, was I good this week? And it gave me this ability to kind of pan out and zoom out of my life and make sure everything was in order on the things that mattered to me, because I was still in that mindset of like, oh my God, I could die in this skydive. I was dealing with all this fear on the airplane, and it would really force me to look inward and make sure all my ducks were in line. And so I think that was the original thing that really created so much value in my life for this sport, was the ability to just have a fully different perspective on the city of Los Angeles, but also on a bigger scale, just on my life. And I really fell in love with it because of that.
That's really neat. That's really cool. You were just sitting there, I should go skydiving. And it changed your life, like drastically changed your life.
How beautiful is it? I mean, there's so many stories like that in our sport of just like how you're doing your thing and you're on your path, and then suddenly we find this thing. And it's, you guys both know, you're both in the sport where it's like you're doing it, you find this thing, and then a whole 180 from the direction maybe that you were headed in. And it's really beautiful. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
JRuss, what you look like you're thinking something.
I think that's one of the best bios we've ever had. Normally it's like 10 seconds and it's over. So that one was great.
Awesome.
Okay. So what made you, how did that come about that you started LSD? Can you tell me a little bit? And I'm guessing probably most of our listeners probably don't know what LSD is. So I would love to hear a little bit about how it got started, but also what it is and what you do, so that they can kind of know that that's out there and that's an option.
Awesome. Yeah. So LSD, I couldn't find anybody at Skydive Spain to learn head down with. I was barely, I had some poor souls that would take me for two ways and hold me, in a head down position. And that's how I learned it. I mean, I have, 40 hours in the tunnel. Everything that I've learned, I've had to learn in the sky, which isn't heroic. That's how we started in skydiving, but it's a long road. So I had a lot of poor souls hold me head down, and that's how I was starting to learn. And I could fly it stable. I could keep my head pointed towards earth, but I didn't know how to take grips and all of that stuff. And there was this woman named Palm from France who came to Skydive Spain, and she stayed at my house, and she'd just gotten back from the women's world record. And first of all, she's French, she's beautiful, she's amazing. And I was just like, she's sparkly to me, this female who totally rips in the sport, who's feminine and awesome. And she'd just gotten back from the women's world record, the previous one, 2018, 2016, somewhere around there. And she told this story to me at my kitchen table about the women's record, and it sounded amazing. And I'm a girl's girl. I really love strong female relationships in my life. I've been so blessed with them. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, I want to do this. But like, I didn't even know there are that many women that, could fly at this level. And so I really wanted to be on the women's world record, but I couldn't figure out how to learn how to fly big ways. So my friend Juliana, she approached me and said, hey, should we like do an event or something? So it was actually like this co-creation. I was with another woman. We were going to learn how to do big ways together. And we came up with the name LSD, Level Slot Dock. She created the logo, which is just a really like cheeky logo with a couple puzzle pieces and for level, slot, and dock. And we had our first one, and it was Ryan Riesberg. He was over in Europe at that time, so he came and coached for me, and Marie Shoden was the coach. And I always wanted a male and female coach. I thought it would be really cool. So we did one, and it was a success. We had 15 ways from the Dornier aircraft. And then we did two more, and then Juliana was out. She loved it, but she wasn't in the sport to be in the sport. She was like also hiking and did all this really cool stuff. So I continued on. I asked her if she didn't mind if I just kept making it have a life. And so, yeah, so it originally started as big ways. Sometimes it was one plane, sometimes it was multiple aircraft, always out of Skydive Spain. And that's how I learned how to fly big ways, was I would bring all the people to me so that I would have the chance to be able to fly big ways. And that's how I learned it.
Hmm.
So they were at that time the only big ways happening in Europe. You know, it just kind of like had fallen flat in the industry over there in terms of big way camps. So they were really successful. And then I started to get into angle flying and started LSD angle camps. And Tex was a big part of that. I brought him on and have done every single one of my LSD camps with Tex here at Spaceland Houston. And it's been incredible also to partner with him in that way and bring him on board LSD. And we've just had a great time. So now they're all the vertical and all the angle, and it's a blast. I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So one of my sons just today asked me, he said, what does big way mean? How many does it have to be for it to be a big way? And I said, that's a good question. So how many does it have to be a big way?
Ooh, I would love to hear JRuss's opinion on this.
Well, I mean, I think that's just relative. You know, when you're starting to learn how to fly head down, a 4-way can feel pretty freaking big. But, you know, I will jokingly, like every once in a while, I'll jump with people who don't know me very well. And, hey, what size are you comfortable with? And I'll say 200 or less. And that's just kind of relative to what your experience is, you know. But I normally I would say getting close to a single plane otter is maybe a 20 is the beginnings of big way, or 15, something like that. But I mean, that's a pretty arbitrary distinction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. If it's a belly, I would say an 8-way is a big way, and that's how I determine they go out first. But yeah, I would also say it's really like a personal thing. For some skill level, for sure, like 8 is going to be really big. And you know, my for LSD camps, it's always been minimum 15, because I used to throw them out of a Dornier. Here at Spaceland, you know, they're 23 or 22 plus camera.
So most people don't probably know what a Dornier is. If you want to just quickly describe what that is.
Oh, goodness gracious. I wouldn't know how to explain the aircraft other than it's a beast. There's only a few that are actually still flying in the world, and the Swallows they picked up a couple more. I think they have 6. But it has a massive, massive door. And it's up to 15,000 feet, which is what we fly in Spain, in about 11 minutes. It's
okay.
The greatest jump plane in the world. I love it.
And the door is big. The door is big both directions, both wide and tall.
Why? Yeah, I would say it probably is a little bit, maybe if not the same as an otter, maybe a little bit taller.
Wow.
And also very wide. Yeah, it's a
That's
big
awesome.
door.
Very cool.
Yeah. Have you guys jumped out of one? Have you, JRuss?
No, I coached the UK national team for a few years, and they had one there, and so I would see it every once in a while at a distance, but they were jumping something else in preparation for the meets, and it wasn't a comp plane, so they didn't want to use it, but just saw it on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I've never even heard of. I mean, I didn't even know what it was.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know of any other drop zones that use the Dornier G92s. I'm not sure, actually. They were the only ones, and of course they own 3 drop zones: the Spain, Algarve, and Hibbelstow. So they kind of move the planes around. They've got a couple caravans as well. But great plane.
Hibbelstow is in UK, right? Maybe that's where I was.
Yeah, it is in the UK.
Yeah.
They do some comps out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking when we were talking about the size of big ways and Alethia, I don't know if you've ever told this to people who come to your camps, or if this is just something I like to say, but people get a little bit, I don't know what the right word is, maybe anxious about, it's going to be a 60 way, or it's going to be an 80 way, or 100 way, or whatever it's going to be. And when you see the video and you see 5 planes in formation and there's people just flooding out of them, and you're like, oh, that's maybe intimidating. But most people, you don't interact with all that group. You're going to do an 8-way or a 10-way with the people that are right around you, and you're going to follow those people in, and those are the people. I mean, you're going to see this mass of bodies, but it's not your skydive. I mean, it's wrong to say it's not your skydive, but your skydive is basically a 10-way or a 12-way. So if you've done that at home and you're comfortable with that, then try to push out sort of the extraneous people that aren't part of your group, and don't get overwhelmed by the idea of jumping with that number of people, because it doesn't matter if it's a 500 way head down, you're still going to interact with about 10 or 12 people at the most, and that's it.
Yeah, it's really true. That's definitely something that I've communicated before, and it's what Marie and Ryan, when I didn't really know how to create my event, and I was just kind of like, what should the requirements be for this? And they said, if people can jump in a 4-way successfully, head down, not corking, but they've flown in 4 ways, they can fly in 15 ways, they can fly in 25 ways. And it's really true. You know, of course, 4 to 200 is a really big step, but you can break it down into such a small group of people that you are, like you say, interacting with. It's absolutely true. Yeah.
That's helpful. That's really good. That's cool. So Alethia, we like I said, we had a couple of really good conversations over the weekend, and I would love to just kind of put it to you, what out of all that stuff that we talked about, because what are those things is kind of on your mind or heart right now that you really want to kind of dig back into, that we can put out there for everybody else, and hopefully get some feedback from JRuss too.
Oh my goodness.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah. Safety is a really big deal in the sport, and just any directions we can go in safety, any directions we can go in athleticism in the sport, in training and keeping, being as serious as we want to be. And then, I think, one of the things that keeps coming up for me in the sport is, you just mitigating risks and trying to create a culture where safety is really cool, and rules are not meant to be fun killers, but they're meant to create more freedom and create a safer community, and as well as athleticism. So I think, maybe we'll start with safety as a culture, and, with such experience on this podcast, maybe we can kind of elaborate a little bit. But one of the things that we were talking about over the weekend was just how it's always been, that skydiving is this free community, and we get to explore such freedom, and it's really a place that we can go to where we can have this self-expression that maybe other areas of our life we can't necessarily tap into. And so in some ways, I've experienced that rules can be really looked down upon, or, the safety culture of wanting to communicate things can kind of seem a little naggy or a little not so fun. But it's something I really believe that the more that we kind of normalize conversations around safety and normalize rules being there for the safety and the longevity of our sport, the safer we make this whole thing. Yeah. So it's out at Spaceland. I think you guys spoke to Tex about it. We've created a whole system of angle movements here with the board, and I think you guys have talked about this with him. And it has created such like a sigh of relief for everybody on the drop zone, because within those standards, we actually understand what we're doing to such a deeper level. And those who aren't involved in angle flying, like the belly flyers and the ground crew and just the whole drop zone, they understand so much more on such a deeper level that it's like it raises the culture of awareness and information and safety at the drop zone. And once you buy into that idea of, it's okay to make mistakes, but it's also, those are opportunities for us to really learn and to create safer standards. It's just, it makes the sport so much more free feeling.
Yeah. I had actually forgotten about that particular part of our conversation. I'm so glad that you brought that up. I was reading a book that I'm reading through this morning. I was reading, and he specifically talked about a memory of his where he was flying a kite, and he was talking about rules and guidelines and structure and how valuable they are, and that they provide us with the ability to do the things that we want to do. And he was talking about a kite because it has a string holding it back, pulling against it. That's actually what allows it to fly. And if you've ever flown a kite as a kid and you actually accidentally let go of the string, or the string broke, as soon as that happens, the kite stops flying. It starts falling, and eventually it's on the ground. It is that restriction that allows it to be free in the sky.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's a great analogy for sure.
And that connects even to the other topic that you mentioned that we talked about the other day, and we can I love this topic, so we can keep talking about this, but it is connected with health and eating and how we treat our bodies. That the same thing, we see that, like, rules and restricting ourselves with food, like, that's kind of obvious to us, to where a lot of times we don't even think about it. But because you even have to eat, like, even that you have to eat to stay alive, that is a rule. If you don't eat, you die. And so we just all accept that rule, we accept that restriction, and we just submit to it. And because we submit to it, it allows us to be and to exist. And if we submit to it on an even higher level, which is eating good food, eating the appropriate amount of food, eating when we should eat and not eating when we shouldn't, then we're even more healthy. We thrive even more. And so that idea, I think it's so good. And I am one that likes to break the rules. I like to buck the system. I like to kind of push and see, well, okay, that's a rule, but why? Why is that a rule? And can I figure out a way to do it without that? So it's these types of things are really. Why are you laughing, JRuss?
I mean, I don't know if I would have guessed that about you.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and I
talk
was
to
just
my mom, man.
okay. Yeah, I guess if you ask my mom, maybe she'd say I pushed a lot. But I like the rules.
Do you?
I do. Yeah. And I mean, once I know that a rule exists, I'm not going to break it. I'm terrible about it. So, yeah.
Man, the like since you mentioned food and fitness and all that in the sport, I mean, I could go on tangents about this forever, and it's obviously a passion of mine. I've dedicated so much of my life to movement and to food and to the inner workings of the complications of being a human. These are all big passions of mine, and it's when I was growing up at that drop zone, and there was so much beer and so much partying and so much craziness, and that was part of the charm. Actually, at that time of my life, it was really fun. It was just this place where all these misfits were going and having kind of this crazy experience outside of skydiving, and that was really cool for a little bit. But it just wasn't sustainable for me, and it didn't really relate to me on so many deep levels. And so, to be able to have to be able to know that you can be in this sport and be an athlete and take care of yourself and do this thing to the highest level that you possibly can, put all of your efforts in, and resonate with people in the sport that are leaders who also pay so much attention to the body as the wing, and taking care of the body as the wing, can be really inspiring. I feel like, there's always going to be the party atmosphere, and there's always going to be just the looser way of being in the sport. And that's really, really cool. And for some people, that's going to be exactly what they need. But there's also this culture in skydiving where I feel like it's gotten a lot more open and more to the surface, where you can show up at the drop zone and, you know, be drinking your grain juice and doing your stretches, not for everybody else to see, but really because you're stretching your body for flying. You can, you know, you can fully focus on your training for the day and take care of your body outside of the sport. And it's just so, so awesome. It really fires me up to see that it's there on the drop zone now, and that, you know, a lot of the leaders are, you know, kind of out in the open with it. And it's, yeah, it's really, it's inspiring.
I think that's a trend that I've also seen. To be honest, I'm not doing yoga, although I might stretch in the morning before we train or jump. But just the environment of being, and I think you mentioned this about one of your camps. It's not the party. Like your people that are there to work, and they're there to learn, and maybe they party on their own time. But I feel like I mean, the party scene is still there, and I'm pretty sure it always will be. But I remember, this last invasion down at Sebastian, there was a guy who came back to jumping after 10 years off or something, and he had been jumping for a bunch of years, and I don't want to say everything about his background, but during the wrap up of the event, or maybe a weather hold, I can't remember, he said, man, it's great to come back, but there's one thing that I really feel like it's changed, and I don't get it. I want it the old way. And he's like, where's the party? Like, it's like the party scene has disappeared. And, you know, the invasion is over New Year's, and I was like, well, I mean, there's going to be people partying on New Year's for sure. That'll never stop. But I just feel like the overall trend that I feel like I see in the community is people want something out of their weekend. They want to get something out of that registration fee, and they don't just want to pay to sit around and party all day and miss out on the jumps. And again, nothing against anybody. If you want to party all day, that's cool. But I feel like a lot more people are just interested in the progress of their skill set and the progress of their learning, and not just the party, which I like, not being a big partier.
Yeah. I mean, I'm obviously much newer to the sport than both of you, but coming into the sport, I see people, it's like they see it as they are investing in themselves. And this is one part of their life. I mean, a lot of people they're spending a lot of money because they want to, and they want to get better. They want to be a better flyer. They want to be a better canopy pilot. They want to be able to do more disciplines and do different types of jumps. And a lot of people really, they're spending time and energy and money and effort to improve their lives, to make themselves better, and to be a part of a community. And yeah, I think it makes me want to do the same thing. You know, I think it's really cool.
Alethia, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say the difference between, I'm going to step away from the camera and plug my charger in. I just see a notification. But the difference between the people that show up on these, and it's not a plug, I swear, but there's such a palpable difference when we run the tunnel wellness retreat, right? Not just like flowy, pretty yoga. It's mobility. It's opening up hips. It's opening up shoulders and warming up lats. And it's doing all the stuff that you're going to need to activate and recruit for flying in the tunnel an hour a day. And the progress that is showing in people when they go through the mindfulness meditation right before they go flying, and then they go through this mobility drill and, you know, this movement I put them through for like an hour and a half before flying, it's just so impressive. You know, and they're eating all this beautiful food that I'm preparing that's like clean and has a lot of power. And I mean, it's outrageous. By the time they've gone through this whole day program that's, you know, I've tailored to get them into the body to be able to just actually know how to, you know, how to tuck their tailbone, or how to recruit their obliques, or how to pull their shoulders back. A lot of people don't really know how to isolate body parts. And so, you know, they're trying to go perform in the sky for 60 seconds and they need to isolate their lats. And it's like, you know, when you go up there and you're flying head up on your belly, like pull your lats down. And for some people, it's just like, I don't understand, you know, but if they're actually working into their body before they go fly, it makes a big difference. It really, really does. So it's not that you have to do yoga or, understand a vinyasa flow, but it's just this, if we want to go far in our flying as athletes, which if you're spending money doing this thing, you are in a sport. And if you're in a sport, you're an athlete, professional or not, this is what we're doing. And so if you can kind of reframe what we're doing in that way and start to treat your body and take the approach in that way, oh man, the progression it's awesome. It really is.
Yeah.
You got to plug in?
Yep. Go.
Bye, Alethia. Bye. Well, JRuss, did you have something that you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, just because we've talked about angles a bunch of times, and I feel like you continue to get questions about angles. I wrote down a bunch of things, and one of them might be an off-camera thing, but we'll see. So, with respect to the culture of safety, and I'm gonna draw a parallel, I hope, is when I started swooping, I think it was 2005. It was kind of the Wild West, and people were, I mean, they had to try and tell people that femur is not a verb, and it was just like an every weekend experience. And there's still a poster from back in those days that says femur is not a verb, and little testimonials from some of the original people that were trying to push swooping forward. And over the years, unfortunately, I think because of a lot of accidents, we've paid for the information that we have, and the progression that exists in swooping. And I won't say there's not still accidents. Obviously, there still are, but and there always will be. I think when humans are towing the line on whatever it is, that eventually you're going to cross the line in a way that you can hopefully survive. But swooping has definitely evolved, and there are good qualified coaches out there, and if you want to learn how to do it safely, you can get it. And I guess I was thinking during the conversation that I have some friends, and again, I don't want to say their names because I don't have their permission, but they had to dump people out from an angle dive, that there was a collision because somebody didn't know what they were doing, and that one of the jumpers went unconscious, and thankfully they're very good flyers, and they made it to that unconscious person and pulled their reserve for them. But I don't hear that as much lately. I haven't heard one of those sort of anecdotal stories in a while, and I could be out of the loop, but I'm pretty current in skydiving. I totally completely stay off social media, so that I could be insulating myself from that information. But I'm wondering, Alethia, because you're in that discipline much more than I am, do you feel like have we reached a sort of a stable point of like there's good information out there? It's harder for people to get onto a jump and be a complete zoo. People understand the critical elements of the need for safety, and not only the people who are actually on that jump, but the sort of the ancillary people that are around the jump, the belly flyers, the solo free flyers, and how do you feel about that sort of shifting safety culture?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't think we're quite there yet. I think we're actually right at the beginning of where the change is happening. We're in a bubble at Spaceland Houston because it's just unheard of in terms of safety culture here, from bottom to top and top to bottom. So it's kind of easy sometimes to be in this rhythm where it's like, man, the sport is crushing it. Everybody is on board with this thing. This is so cool. And then the moment you step outside or of this drop zone, or maybe, some people roll through that don't have this available to them, it's like, yeah, it's definitely still there. But we are at the change where, where the conversation is happening so much more, with the leading workshop that Sharon and Luis have put together. Those have just been incredible for the sport. And these types of things that Spaceland has been putting into the system, and it's the word is getting out there for sure. Leaders like Tex giving these talks at the PIA. It's like the information is really starting to get out there on a bigger scale. But I'd say practically, we still see a lot, not necessarily on our jumps, but you open up social and you see somebody posted a video and it's like, oh, woo, that's not only was this situation a little bit hairy, but it's also it's okay enough in this person's mind that they would post this thing because they don't really see it. They don't have that discerning eye yet for it, of that maybe being kind of a sketchy situation. So it's, in some ways it's coming, but we're not fully there yet. It's a hard thing to change, there's so many people leading jumps and so many people making skydives on any given day around the world. And to be able to say that, hey, you guys, we've kind of figured some things out over here. We should probably tailor the jumps back a little bit and make sure your leaders really understand all the nuances of leading this jump, all of the conditions of weather and drop zones and all of that stuff. But I don't think we're there yet, but it's definitely trending that way for sure.
Cool.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Well, these are in no discernible order. But we have had a couple conversations about angle groups going up line of flight. And there's, to say that there's some different ideas about that would probably be an understatement. So I'm curious. I think I know, as much as I know anything, about that at some of the camps that happen into land, they are going up line of flight for significant periods of time, which in my mind would, well, I'm not even going to say what's in my mind. So if you agree that is a thing, flying up line of flight, what are the circumstances that allow for that, or don't allow for that, or how do you feel about that general idea?
Any jump is going to fly up the line of flight for a couple seconds to kind of gather the group. We have a little bit of a window to be able to go with the line of flight for a few seconds, just to not get off the plane and bank a 90 and lose the group. So there's a couple seconds where you're up the line of flight, and then you're definitely getting off of the line of flight. You can fly parallel to the line of flight, making sure you've actually gotten off the line of flight. And of course, you're going to open away from the line of flight. So there's times, I guess, if we've got 3 moving groups and that's it on the aircraft, and maybe one of the sides, we've got first going to the west, and the second goes to the east, and then the third group goes to the west. And maybe this side on the east is not really a good area to lead over, but it's a camp. We've got to share it. Those people, in communication with the other groups, could be going up the line in flight if they've got a bit of a more dynamic skydive. So those are just 2 examples where we might be up the line of flight, but it's not a usual thing for angle groups to be flying up the line of flight. I'd say that's I wouldn't really know a lot of scenarios where we would do that, other than just the exit for a couple seconds. But that's pretty much just to gather the group to fly smooth and predictably from the door, and then to get off the line of flight. Does that kind of answer your question? Were we hitting on the same mark there?
Yeah, for sure. I've had this talk with a few different people over the, I don't know, last few years. Do you know Dan Adams and Leslie Minatrie? They're all over the place, but they are mostly in Florida in the winter and Chicago in the summer. But they've done a ton of angle camps, and they're actually the people that run the angle leadership here at Chicago and certify people to lead and blah blah blah. And have had a couple conversations with Dan about that gathering moment, or few moments in the beginning of the skydive. And I guess the conversation, the way that it normally plays out, is that I agree that that's possible. I get concerned about the level of the skydiver who, and the exact way that I usually say it is that you don't know what your students are going to hear. And so if you say, hey, we're going to go up line of flight for a few seconds, and then we're going to turn to the west, and your student hears, hey, we're going to go up line of flight, then there's a potential for disaster there. So I'm just always curious when I talk to angle people, and the funny thing is I'm going to do hundreds of angle jumps this year, and so it's not like an us and them kind of thing, but just always wondering what different takes people have on that general idea.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I really like, the flying up the line of flight is really just a collection point for a couple seconds. We're not, our main goal as a leader is to get the group off of jump run, and to make sure that we're working away from jump run, and that we're opening away from jump run, and opening away from jump run and the other group. And that where we're opening is a place where all of the jumpers are going to be opening in a place away from other groups and away from jump run. And that place is going to be close enough to where they can actually make it back to the drop zone. So those are in terms of like just pure leading, those are my responsibilities as a leader: off of jump run, away from all of the other groups, in an area from the other groups, the other movement groups. And then with all of the canopies of my group, if I'm launching, taking out a 7-way in total, all other 6 people in my group, they have got to open in a place not pointed towards jump run, but away from jump run and the other movement group. There's no way that I could do those things by keeping everybody safe if I stayed up the line of flight for more than just that couple seconds on exit.
So we talked about this, Chris and I did. I don't know if it was with a guest or it was in response maybe to some question that somebody wrote in, but I brought up this point, and just because I want people to understand the logic of what you're saying, because sometimes they don't. And I in general, I would love to tell everybody, hey, we're going to get off line of flight. But you have a valid point, as does several of the other people. And you're saying, what would you say collection is? 3 or 4 seconds? Is that too long?
It depends on what the jump run is, what the winds are doing, right? But I mean, I'm pretty much like exiting, looking at everybody, roll over, check that everybody's with me, and now we're turning. And it's, it can be just a subtle turn, or it can be off exit. I always leave with line of flight. My body is still with line of flight. But if everybody's there already, I'm already initiating this really gentle turn.
So what I was hoping, I'm a really bad artist, but I wrote it up because Dan made this point, and when he and I were talking, it was a very valid point. And even though on the verbiage side of things, I get nervous about saying that we're going to go up line of flight for any period of time, the logic of it is, here we go, ready? This is exiting and the hill for anybody that's interested. So a normal time on the hill, and I'm quite familiar with the hill because what typically will separate competitive teams, among other things, but your work on the hill, and you've got about 8 seconds before you are no longer being thrown forward with respect to the earth. There's enough wind resistance that you're now going vertically, if that was your intent, which for most VFS teams, vertical is the intent, or belly teams, formation skydiving, you're going to want to go vertical. So you've got 8 seconds. And so if you're saying you're going to get out and go line of flight for 4 to 5 seconds and then make a hard corner, you're actually traveling less far forward than the people who got out just saying that they were making a vertical skydive. And so my disagreement generally is the misunderstanding that could happen if someone doesn't listen to everything that you say, basically. Not that you're going to tell people, hey, we're going to track up line of flight for 40 seconds. would be ridiculous. But that if people hear that in the loading area or belly flyers, or I'm picking up belly flyers, but somebody who's just not educated maybe about the whole process, your 3, 4, 5 seconds of collection is less time than someone would spend on a vertical skydive. And that's an important distinction to make.
Yeah. 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 And, you know, I think this is also, it highlights why these conversations need to happen, and why kind of the leading workshop is such a good tool out there, is because, you know, for sure, every time I'm at the loading area or walking my groups at an event, or taking my my private students, I'm trying to explain as much as I possibly can, even if it sounds a little bit basic for some. We go look at the winds, we go look at the jump run, we know where our holding area is. I mean, we discuss everything, right? And it's so that I know the people that are following me understand why I'm making all these decisions. Mostly so that when they go lead their own jumps, if they're approved, or if they're a drop zone where they don't have to be approved, they can start to make those decisions on their own. They have enough information. Also, when we have this discussion in the boarding area, those people, the belly jumpers and the solo free fly and all of those people, they can start to hear it too. It's not this like coveted information reserved for podcasts and leaders, right? It's information that we're all open for discussion on these things, you know, because more information comes out on the forward throw and drift and where we should all be. And on top of that, we're all having different experiences, right? Maybe in Chicago, you've had an experience that could really challenge anybody jumping out of the aircraft line of flight for a couple seconds with their group. In which case, if we have this culture that we can discuss things and just know that we're all doing this thing, nobody's really the expert here because skydiving has just so many situations that come up, then we can kind of make sure that we all share that information and hopefully have safer jumps because of it.
Absolutely.
Do you have more questions, JRuss?
We're getting close to we're a little bit over the hour, and I had to chuckle, and this is just it's not just hopefully funny. But have you seen the movie Zombieland with Woody Harrelson and who else is in that movie? But you know, zombies are kind of trying to take over the earth, and there's just a few people alive, and he hooks up. Have you seen it, Alethia?
I don't think so.
Oh no. Okay. Well, it's going to be way less funny. But there's this young kid. He's probably 25, and he's the narrator for the movie, and he's like laying out these rules that he's developed. Chris, have you seen it? Tell me you've seen it.
I've seen like the first 15
Oh
minutes.
man. So he lays out these rules. This is what you got to do to survive the zombie apocalypse. You got to have double tap him in the head. You got to be good cardio. You got to, and he's got all throughout the movie, in like the first half, he's stretching. Like the zombie will come at him and he'll like, and he'll stretch out, and then he'll just start running away, and the zombie can't keep up, and he locks his keys in the car or something, but he just does laps and he outruns the zombie. And then there's a part where Woody Harrelson meets up with them, and they're going to go down and get some Twinkies out of this broke down van. And he starts stretching, and Woody Harrelson's like, what are you doing? He's like, man, I got to be limber. I got to be ready for my thing. And Woody Harrelson's like, do you ever see a cheetah stretch before it runs down a gazelle? So when you were talking about how, you know, you got to engage your lats, and which I think is very important. And I was really happy that somebody's doing wellness for skydivers, because it's great when we run tunnel camps that people are so gassed out by the end. But that's what came to mind. And I figured for the end of the show, maybe that's a good.
Do you ever see a cheetah stretch before gazelle?
But I do think it's very important. I also stretch before we train.
I'll be adding that to my queue for sure.
Yeah, put that on.
It is a really good movie. I can't believe either one of you haven't seen it. It's great.
I love Woody Harrelson.
Yeah, he's awesome.
So I do have a practical question for you, and it may be just a very, very simple answer. But let's say you're leading a small group. Maybe it's just you and two other people, or you and three other people. They're less experienced angle flyers. And you leave and you move off of jump run. And at some point, one of them is falling way behind. What do you do? And what would you like to, well, an opportunity to coach and tell me as someone who leads movement jumps, but other people that might be listening, what do we need to hear from you? And maybe it's just a simple answer. You just slow down and stop, or what, I don't know. What do you do? What would you have us do?
If it's really beginner, I don't have a full tracking jump until I'm confident that they can pretty much follow that line of flight with me, meaning my line of flight.
Yeah.
And so I usually add like a lot of belly with track, belly track, belly track, to ensure there's moments in the skydive that I can collect them and we're on the same page where I want them to be in terms of the jump run. And then always, especially if I don't know the jumper yet and I'm establishing a relationship as their educator and them as a flyer, I always make sure to tell them no matter what. So if they're kind of at that gray area where now we are doing a whole tracking jump, but I know that they're going to be just a little bit of a dot up there, you know, we've got the keys where we can go back to belly. If it's going to be a full tracking jump, I make sure that they know no matter what, they're still going to follow my same heading. It's just no matter what, they're working with the body controls and they might not be able to get onto my level, but as long as they're still in the same direction that I'm flying, we'll be safe. So yeah, and that's just, you know, that's, you know, it's, I think, you know, most people have that experience where there's a rogue skydiver, right? And so trying to eliminate that rogue skydiver, because for sure, if somebody's, you know, 5,000 feet higher than you are and they're nowhere near your skydive and maybe they're just frustrated, they can, you know, if they take off at that point in the skydive, now they're like a solo tracking jump going who knows where. So I just make sure there's no questions really unanswered before we even start that first jump together. But I really like to work through all the progress as slowly as possible. I'm definitely one of those coaches who's, you know, I play within like a really safe kind of a jump plan. I'm not a really sendy coach until I see a lot of the fundamentals are there. I don't send a lot of dynamic lines if as a group or a flyer, you're just not there yet, because I don't like to promote, for me personally, I don't like to promote that we should just start doing pass-throughs and block and rolls and all this stuff when we can't even be on level. So I'm definitely on the safer skydive kind of coach. And I like that. I like to be able to work up as opposed to kind of take a couple steps forward and then have to work back. It doesn't feel really good. So that usually eliminates that in some way.
Yeah.
Good question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. JRuss, you got anything else?
Yeah, I mean, what she said just brought up a question, but man, we would need another hour to talk about it. And yeah, it's just the general feeling that I have. And I did years as a tunnel instructor. And I think I might have talked about this before, but generally speaking, when we'd have groups of kids come in, the say 4, 5, 6-year-old groups of kids, not of course, not to an extreme, but by and large, the young girls were better flyers. They took instruction better. They were more aware of their bodies. And then if you took a similar or same group of people when they were in their 20s, now the women that show up have a little bit less confidence. The men are overflowing with confidence. But they've gotten a little bit more in tune with their bodies. They're good athletes. And so the flying has maybe stabilized, or maybe the girls aren't doing it, but it seems more of like I'm holding myself back than a lack of ability. It's as if our culture has trod on the women for the last 15 years of you shouldn't be an athlete, and then pumped up the guys. And guys, this is for both of you. This is really getting to my philosophy as people. But when Alethia is talking about that, I'm not really a sendy coach. It really, like, I wonder if people can think about, like, how is it that when I've got a group of 10 people at Summerfest, or that's too big, let's say 6, and there are 3 girls and 3 men. Oh, this happens to Chris's camera every time. That at that event, if I say, how are you as flyers, I'm going to get 3 honest answers from the women, and I'm going to get 3 bullshit answers from the guys. And this is stereotyping, but it's very true a lot of the times. And how do we get that sort of circumspect attitude back into 50% of our population, so that they can be realistic about their skills, they can take things in the process as it belongs, and not just full send at all times that crosses the line potentially into safety issues. And so it is really nice to hear that you're not a sendy coach until you know, why are we going to do flock and rolls when we can't even stay on level? That's a good thing to hear. I just and again, this is a much longer conversation about who we are as people, but if I could take some of that out of the women and inject it back into the men, man, make my groups more manageable.
Oh my God, JRuss, like, you guys got a couple more hours?
Yeah.
But like, it is, I can't even, I mean, it is so wild how true that is. I mean, with my group, it's like, you know, all right, guys, tell me a little bit about where you're at in your flying and what you can fly, right? So I can start to build the day with 6 strangers in Slovenia who I'm supposed to coach for the day. And it's just like, you know, typically the males have overestimated their abilities, and then the females underestimate. And then at least I know that. So I build slow, because I, you know, don't trust a lot of people in the sky when I haven't flown with them yet. So it's really such a classic thing to experience. It's definitely true. And it even goes more kind of like finite with that. We've got men who, when I'm coaching, you know, it's a whole different approach to men when I'm coaching than it is to females. I know sometimes when I rock up and there's 6 very masculine men, and they're, you know, they've got all the right gear and all the right stickers, and they're like, you know, they've been doing flock and rolls and they're ready to send it. And then they see me, a female, you know, who has been coaching for a long time, but I'm not a tunnel rat, you know, and they see me, and it's just like, oh man, you know, she's not Tex, right? But
you gotta hang out with Steph.
I've got some stuff, you know. And so usually on those days, I have to approach them and almost, you know, like, you know, sorry, but like, I have to show them. I have to show them.
You have to prove yourself.
Yeah.
I have to smoke them on the first jump, or really, you know, versus when, you know, and then I've got the respect after that first jump. It's like, okay, yes, I'm a female and I am feminine, but guess what? I have something to give. When it's a female, you know, and I've got all those men, the female she'll stand back, and, you know, and typically they're very soft and they don't want to overstep, and they'll be in the same skydive, but they'll be, you know, 50 feet over there flying on level, and, you know, in a slot, if the slot was 50 feet outside of the group. And I have to whisper in those women's ears, like, you're invited into your slot next. You're not going to break me. You know, I want you there. I want you to touch some part of me, grab my hand. I have to, like, invite them in. I have to let them know that if they do bump into me, I'll actually be happy. I will tell women, if you bump into me, I'm going to be stoked. I will be super stoked. If you come in too hot and you know, you get in my way, I'll applaud you and do all the jumps on the ground, because they're so nervous. They're so nervous to mess up. They don't believe in themselves. And it's truly, truly a thing. I think this is also why it's so important for females to get coaching from Steph and all the women coaches out there, because it's a different approach. A lot of them get lost in a lot of different layers of being a female in the sport. And and that kind of holds them back from experiencing what they can experience. Krista and I touched on this a little bit, like, you know, at 10 grand the other day before we jumped out, we started to talk a little bit about the differences of being a female and a male in the sport. And in some ways, you know, it's like the conversation, we have the conversation, and I'm really passionate about it as well, because, you know, there wasn't a lot of females to look up to when I was growing up in the sport. I didn't know where they were. And, you know, it's kind of hard being out there with so many macho personalities and really strong men and strong flyers. And as a soft female, you do definitely get a little bit lost in that current of masculine energy. It's just what it is, right? It's not that there's not an invitation for us to be there, but it's hard to find your way out there as a female. But when you see other women out there crushing it, you know, look at Inca, she's a beast, and still a woman and holds her space. You know, Stephanie, I mean, there's so many women out there now doing it, but it's very, very hard to get into that rhythm, to take yourself seriously, to be confident up there with all the men and be like, oh, what are my skills? I crush it. I'm going to beat every one of this men to the formation. You know? You rarely hear a woman say that, but there are, you know, for every woman that says it, there's, you know, 200 male skydivers that are going to say that. So it's really a thing, JRuss. I'm glad you're bringing up. Big passion.
I mean, probably you and Tex running the same thing, but Steph and I working together, it's just, I mean, she doesn't take it personally, but it's hilarious the number of times that for whatever reason, because I'm male, people look to me for the answers, and then I'm like, I can tell you what I think, but if you want the answer, Steph's got it. The funny thing about organizing groups and being like, hey guys, what can you do? Hey ladies, what can you do? If I could give anybody advice, I don't know if we're closing out the show, but just be honest with your organizer, because in 25 or 30 minutes, I'm going to see whether or not you're totally full of shit or whether you are real. So just tell me what you can really do, and let's get on with our day.
That's half of the work of the events, is just like looking at the forms, knowing that person's flying, you know, or you're a slot flyer on all of this. We jumped last week. You are quadrant at best, you know. I don't know what it is. Yeah.
All right. What do you think, Chris? Are we there?
Well, there is one other thing that I want.
Absolutely.
Do you have time, Alethia? Are you okay?
Yep, I'm all yours.
I would like to go back to something you said, maybe 20 minutes ago, or maybe it was more than that. You said something along the lines of, I promise this is not a plug, or something like that. First of all, you have full permission to give a plug for what you're doing with people. Number one, because, well, JRuss and I think we're kind of picky about who we invite, because we care about the community, and we're trying to put people in front of the community that are respectful and good and kind, and are really trying to serve and bless the community of skydivers. And I think that what you're doing and what you're trying to do for the skydiving community is a real value. And so you have every right and opportunity to give a plug for it, because you're giving something really, really good to people. So I want to go back to that, and I want to ask you to please share with our listeners more about those tunnel camps. You did kind of go through it, and I'm glad that you did, but I want you to know that I want people to hear about it. I think it's really awesome, and I have a hard time. I totally understand. So it sounds like I'm getting on to you, but I feel the same way about Crave. I don't ever want to say anything to people. Like, you know, the whole weekend that I'm at Spaceland.
Are you listening to your own advice?
I'm trying to say I understand.
The point of Crave is to educate people and make a safer community and get all the information out there and archived in one place.
But at the same time, I understand her sentiment, and that is a testimony, I think, to. Anyways, all weekend at San Marcos, I didn't say anything. I never say anything to people about
nerds.
Crave.
Nerds.
So please, Alethia, will you please? Can we go back to that and you share a little bit more? If there's anything that you feel like you didn't get to say about those wellness camps, and I want to hear. I want people to hear more about it.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for the kind words. I really take those to heart. I appreciate that. Um, yeah, the wellness retreats are they really are truly a mini wellness retreat. I'll just walk you through the day program real quick. People show up, we pick them up from the airport, we take them to a house, a big beautiful house in El Paso that we all share together. They wake up on the first morning, breakfast is laid out for them. They eat breakfast, we get to know each other, and then we go do about an hour and a half of movement. And it depends a little bit on the bodies. Every day the movement session changes depending on what I see in the tunnel. If there's a lot of tight shoulders or sore necks and sore rhomboids, or if the hips are really tight, or people don't have any leg engagement and in-face carving, I can see it all in the tunnel. So I tailor the movement to help either engagement or stretch, or maybe even just get people fired up a little bit because they're not really sport people and they've never really activated anything. So the classes each day switch around. They're mobility or fire or, some yoga. So we go do that, and then everybody has a little bit of a break, and then there's this big family meal that we eat together, all super whole, all really clean, really beautiful food. I cook it, but I know it's beautiful because I have people that come back just for the food. We've got Llewellyn from New York. Every time he comes, he says, I'm coming here for the food, Alethia. You're cooking for 4 days. This is great. So it's all tailored for I figured it out over 4 years what that menu is, and I kind of switched stuff around a little bit for good digestion and like sustained energy, and for people just feeling like they walk away going, shit, man, eating good is like, it feels good. And then after that, you take a 2-hour nap. There's nap time, and it's also a fan favorite. And then we sit down for about 20 minutes, and I guide them through a visualization meditation for flying. So it's really specific to what's going to happen that night in the tunnel. It includes some breathing techniques, and we sit down as a team and as a family, and we go through this visualization together. We go straight from the visualization to the tunnel, and then everybody flies for an hour with techs, coaching one-on-one. We do that over 4 days. Throughout the evening, there's a smoothie. I bring a smoothie in halfway throughout the night, and that's also another fan favorite. People love it. And we become a team. It's like a big family all week because it's intimate. We're living together. We're experiencing, for some people, they've maybe never done classes together like we're doing in the movement session. So, the standard is set at the very beginning of the welcome meeting that people can be vulnerable. They don't have to, no ego needs to be there. You don't have to be better than you are. And you come here to learn, and we see you as an athlete. We take you totally serious so you can geek out as much as you possibly can. And it's also because it is a retreat. People show up, they don't have to, if they want to skip one of the classes, or they want to have lunch in the room because they're just processing life, right? They don't have to show up and be anybody. You don't have to be loud. You don't have to talk. You just don't have to show up and be anybody. If you need to be sleeping in, if you need to be quiet, if you just need to, whatever you need, like, you can take that, and you can feel people just like relieved that they don't have to be what they're normally having to be back home. And it's beautiful. It's really, sometimes the retreats can be a little bit intimate and like emotional. Some people show up with some stuff, and through this whole process of working on their body, working a bit on their mind, and just having the ability to just be, truly just be. Sometimes it can get pretty interesting, but we always leave on the Friday with some people coming in having no tunnel time, sit flying and in face or out face back carving, and the progress in the tunnel is amazing. Tex is an incredible coach, just truly incredible. It's been awesome to see him grow as a coach, bringing in these things into his own training. Like mindfulness and meditation. He's changed his style. And we're debriefing every single night together. It's like, I kind of share what I'm feeling with the participants on the emotional side, or what they're sharing with me, because they're sharing so much. I'm with them all day, and I'm taking them through this big program. So people are really open to me. And if something's going on with them personally, there's just something in their life kind of holding them down, Tex and I speak about that so that Tex can know for his coaching how to be in the tunnel with them. And then he's sharing with me some of the struggles that they're experiencing in the tunnel, and I adapt my program to fit that too. So it's just like we're working together to give these people this experience that is flying, but it's also so much more than flying. You know, if you can walk away from the retreat, and this is the magic of it, is I can't tell you how many emails we get. And now we're about 80% of our participants have been to at least 5. So they're, you know, got one girl who's, I think she's on her 10th. We've got another girl who's on her probably 14th, a guy who's on his 8th. Like, they just keep coming back. But the magic is when we get the email and someone says, hey, Alethia, I'm eating a little bit cleaner now, or I'm not drinking as much, or, you know, I'm using breathing on the airplane, or I started to meditate in the mornings. It's so incredibly rewarding. That's how I feel like I sustain my meaning of the sport, is that I can certainly tell you how to flat track and how to be smooth in your flock and roll. But that will only really keep me entertained for so many years. But if I can actually teach you those things and also pass along these really valuable life skills that have worked to help me kind of go through life with meaning and radiate, then I have so much more meaning in this thing that I'm doing. So it's a true joy, a true joy.
And you kind of said this just now, but maybe not as explicitly as I think you expressed it to me the other day. The way that people are progressing in their flying skills in this type of training environment or health wellness focused environment, you really expressed to me the other day that, you know, if I just went to the tunnel and I met Tex at the tunnel, I was like, hey, coach me for 30 minutes. We just show up, you know, 5-minute briefing, jump in the tunnel, bam, go, okay, I'm going to learn, I'm going to improve. But isn't that something that you were, I mean, you did touch on it just now, but the difference in progression, is that correct?
It's huge. I mean, Tex doesn't teach outside of the retreats anymore because he can, but he has seen this like wild change in progress because people have gone through this program throughout the day where the stress is gone, the focus is entirely there. They're with Tex and I, who are obviously incredibly passionate about this thing, and they can kind of tap into that energy. And then they've spent time like in their body, and the body and the mind is how they're going to fly. So if their mind is like on this stuff that's happening in their life and they're really focused and they're like kind of halfway in work and they ate some Chick-fil-A and some soda and they're hungover and they haven't been in their body in months, and now they're going to go into the tunnel and just hope and pray that they somehow fully understand how to like recruit the core and tuck the tailbone and engage the hamstrings. It's like, good luck with that. You know, that's going to take so much more time. And so, you know, Tex doesn't coach outside of these because it's like the students are so present. They're so present. And it just, it's awesome. It's really, really awesome. I think the more people that get into this and they understand this approach, the more it catches on and people go, I freaking get it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is all connected. How we train is how we fly. And what's going on in the body and the mind is also very evident in the sky or in the tunnel. You know, you can kind of feel it sometimes. I mean, you guys know, you're working with people in the sky or the tunnel. People come to you and they're just like, you know, bent over and they have no real presence in their body, and they're hungover and they're eating freaking whatever throughout the day and they're just not really there. And most of the time, there's some specimens out there that this does not apply to, but most of the time, that's kind of how they fly. And so, you know, if we can tap into teaching people how to really show up for that flying through those modalities that truly work. I mean, the top athletes are using mindfulness. The top athletes are using breath work and visualization and body work. I mean, open up Inner Game of Tennis or Talent Code and you're going to find so many stories of this. And now we can do it in skydiving too. Skydiving is a sport. It takes such huge precision and presence and body awareness. Why not just totally go for it? So yeah, we love it.
It's very cool. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
JRuss?
Great. I was thinking that, people probably like it because if you see the right way to do something, it's a lot harder to go back to doing it the wrong way.
Super good. Yeah. I think you're right about that, JRuss. Yeah. I think that's why we have so many repeat guests. It's like every time we put one out, it's a group of 20 people that just continue to come back over and over again. And then there's always one or two new people on the retreat, and then they become the repeat guests.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Can you say that again?
Me?
No, JRuss.
Oh, once you see the right way to do something, it's hard to go back to doing it the wrong way.
Yeah, that's good.
It's a good one.
I've also been quoting you recently, saying, I don't want to be wrong for any longer than I have to be.
I mean,
You got some good ones, man. You got some good ones.
But that's a really important thing to say, especially when you're talking to a group of people. The example that I gave, I think, was Sharon. Is that right?
That was one of the times. Yeah, you've been wrong a lot, so you say it all the
time.
Yeah.
I have been wrong a lot, but that was specifically about leading movement jumps
Sharon.
and how to talk to people who get left behind. And I said something that was not right, and this was a decade ago. Probably I was at quite a few jumps, and yet Sharon, who did not have the presence in the sport, and I barely knew who she was, came up and said, "You're wrong," and she said it in a much nicer way. She said, "Hey, you said this, but why? And have you thought about this?" And I left, and I thought, man, I barely know who this person is, but that's great, because a lot of times people are intimidated to come up and talk to the person who's standing up there lecturing or giving a weather hold safety briefing where I said something wrong. I don't want to be wrong. So if you've got the magic ticket, come up and give it to me. Don't just sit there and hold it. Yeah.
So Alethia, if people are interested in participating in one of those wellness camps, what's a good way? How can they do that?
Yeah, so I publish all the events on both my Instagram and my Facebook. My Instagram is Alethia J.A., Alethia J.A. And then my Facebook is Alethia J. Austin. And if they add me on either of those places, I have a group that's private for tunnel wellness retreats and the LSD camp. So they can add me in either and just give me a little hello, and I'll add you to the group.
Cool. So they can just reach out through either one, Instagram or Facebook, message you, and then go from there. You'll get them connected and added. How often are you guys doing those?
Yeah, we do about 8 a year. We typically run them from September, October until May. Now, because people have really figured out, that they can kind of tailor them for their own group of people. We've got people that say, "Hey, I've got 4 of my friends and we want to book a tunnel wellness retreat." So you can also, if you've got a crew that you just love to be with, then you can also just book it on a time that works for everybody. Otherwise, we run them, September, October through May, and we have one in July this year because it's a private booking. But
okay, and they're always in El Paso?
They're in El Paso, which is an awesome place to host them. That that tunnel has been really, really good to us and really accommodating. And it's a nice, spacious area out there.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, it's you've done it again. You've wasted another perfectly good hour listening to the Crave Show with JRuss, Chris, and today Alethia. So sorry, you'll never get that hour back.
Hour 40, almost.
Hour 40. That's right.
Yeah.
I hope if you're listening, I hope you've enjoyed it. A lot of really awesome stuff. Alethia, thank you so much for taking time out and chatting with us and sharing so much good info and experience and knowledge. It's really nice. Really cool.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. It was really fun to hang out tonight.
Yeah. Thanks, Alethia. Your passion for everything it abounds. So nice to see.
All right, everybody, get out there, have fun, jump out of an airplane, smile, play with your friends, have a good time, be safe, crave, do more, be better. Thanks, you guys. Bye.
See you guys.